So you just finished the Diablo 4 story, the main campaign. What do you do next? Where is the end game? What is the end game? What does progression look like and how do you progress? So we're going to be going over all that in this video, but first up, I will just say there is no right way to play Diablo 4. Once you finish the story, you can play this however you want, do whatever you want, and enjoy the game your way. But in this video, we're going to talk about all the different ways to progress, advance your character, and all the things available to you once you finish the story. First up, how does progression work? So the way progression works in Diablo 4 is as you progress through the different world tiers, you unlock a new tier, you unlock new content, and you unlock new rewards. Diablo 4 is split into 4 world tiers, with tier 1 and tier 2 simply used for leveling to 50. Think of it as an easy mode and a harder mode. Around level 50, you can complete the capstone dungeon, Cathedral of Light, and doing so will unlock tier 3 Nightmare mode. And this is, in my opinion, where the endgame starts. You can start getting a new type of gear called Sacred Gear once you play on tier 3. Now, Sacred Gear doesn't work how you might think it does. It doesn't go common gear, magic gear, rare gear, legendary gear, sacred gear. It's not on that scale. It's a completely new type of gear. So you will have sacred common, sacred magic, sacred legendary, sort of like that. So it's a complete replacement for any gear pre-50 with much better stats on. So that is hands down the first thing you should be doing, trying to get to 50, get the capstone dungeon unlocked, and getting this new sacred gear. And then post 50, you're looking to get to around level 70 to unlock the next capstone dungeon, the Fallen Temple. Unlocking this lets you access tier 4 Torment mode, which has a new gear type, Ancestral. And again, this has better stats and fully replaces the sacred gear. So yeah, that's how your progression works. It's unlocking these new world tiers, and every time you do, you'll unlock new content in the game as well. So let's go over the different types of endgame content that you unlock at the different world tiers. Starting with number 1, which actually all you have to do is finish the campaign, and that's the Tree of Whispers. So this is the first big endgame task. It can be done at any world tier, and it can even be done on alts at low levels. So every hour, certain sections of the map will be filled with objectives. Completing these objectives will reward you with Grim Favor points, and once you have 10, you can head to the Tree of Whispers and trade them in for a reward. This works very similar to bounties in Diablo 3. There's no limit or requirement on these bounties, and it can even be done on very low level characters as a way to level them up. Overall, it's a great way to gain extra experience and rewards while doing other things like map completion or side quests. Completing these 10 Grim Favors and going for a reward, you do have a chance to get a special reward, so you choose 3 different things, so you could get like a helmet, a weapon, and a chest piece, but there's a chance that some of these will be at higher quality, so I generally always go for the higher quality option because it's got a better chance of having better gear in. Okay, the next big endgame activity is unlocked when you get to tier 3 Nightmare mode. This is Helltides. As soon as you turn on tier 3, you'll unlock Helltides, and these take up giant sections of the map. So what happens is every hour or so, for 1 full hour, a Helltide will spawn, and a whole section of the map will turn red with a Helltide, and there'll be a little notification there that there's a Helltide in that zone. You'll see it yourself from the big red zone that's appeared. While in a Helltide, you collect a currency called Aberrant Cinders for defeating enemies, elites, and completing events. These cinders can be used to open boxes that are spread all around the Helltide. And there's lots of different boxes you can get. Boxes of armor, weapon boxes, and the best of all, the box of mysteries. Once you find one of these boxes, you use your cinders to open it and get a ton of rare gear, which usually includes some legendaries. But if you die in a Helltide, you will lose half of the cinders you've collected. So yeah, this is a very high risk, high reward thing, and the best chests cost the most cinders as well. The best use of your time here is to find and open the chest of mysteries. It's called the Tortured Gift of Mysteries. This costs 175 aberrant cinders, and is always the best chest to open. It's the biggest risk because you have to hold on to a lot of cinders at once and you could lose a lot, but it gives the most rewards. I've seen as many as 4 legendaries drop from one chest. So yeah, the Helltides are really worth doing. You can also collect zone-specific crafting resources, which are used for upgrading your gear here. I've seen mounts drop here from the Helltides and some Bardins. So it's definitely worth spending some time in the Helltides when they're up. Okay, so Helltides, great things to do when you see them, but something that you don't have to wait for is the next big endgame activity, and that is Nightmare Dungeons. These are honestly your main endgame activity. They are challenging dungeons that scale in difficulty and level. To unlock your first Nightmare Dungeon, you just have to turn on tier 3 Nightmare mode and find a sigil. Sigils are basically keys that turn a normal dungeon into a Nightmare Dungeon. Once you're on tier 3, doing any sort of activity, a Gathering Legion, a Tree of Whispers, should start dropping Nightmare Sigils, and right-clicking on the sigil in your consumable inventory will show you where the Nightmare Dungeon is. Once you get your first dungeon, you will get loads more sigils just from completing the Nightmare Dungeons themselves. So kind of once you find your first key, you go into a Nightmare Dungeon, you finish it, you should get some more keys, and you don't really ever have to find that first one ever again. You can pretty much just live in Nightmare Dungeons and just farm them on repeat. And then later on in the game, you'll also unlock the ability to craft these with a quest at the Occultist. So you can literally, you get keys, you can salvage the keys, and you can create new keys from the Occultist. It's a quest that opens up in tier 3. These Nightmare Dungeons work a little like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3 or Mythic plus Dungeons in WoW, except there's no timer. They've got fixed affixes that make the dungeon more challenging and add a lot of variety. Aside from all the gear and legendaries you get for doing these dungeons, they also drop glyphs. Glyphs are one of your like main sources of progression at the end game as well, because they're used in your Paragon Board. So glyphs are used to enhance the Paragon Board and collect rewards inside the Paragon Board. As well as completing a Nightmare Dungeon, you will also have the ability to upgrade a glyph to different levels, and upgrading the level increases how effective it is and the rewards you get from it. So yeah, this is where endgame progression really starts. You complete these Nightmare Dungeons, you level up and get experience, you gain Paragon points for leveling up, you get glyphs, you get to upgrade your glyphs, and you get harder keys. So completing a level 1, you might get a level 2 key, and you progress like that, and then you can craft 5, 6s, etc. as you go along. With the increase at each level, the level of the mobs increase. And yeah, this is the true, I would say this is the real end game progression. And talking about end game progression, once you complete the capstone dungeon, Fallen Temple, at around level 70, you can switch to tier 4 and start doing Ancestral Nightmare Dungeons. These are much harder versions of the tier 3 Nightmare Dungeons. These Ancestral Dungeons scale from tier 20 all the way up to 100 and have much more challenging dungeon affixes. So for example, I've got here a level 1 key. This has 1 positive affix and 2 negative affixes. And then if we compare that to a tier 98 key, which is an ancestral key because it's above level 20, they have 1 positive and 4 negative. And with 4 negative affixes and very high level monsters, these can be extremely challenging endgame content. These Ancestral Nightmare Dungeons are where the real builds will be tested. And if you don't have good gear, you don't have a good build, if you're really undergeared and weak, this is where your hardcore characters are probably going to get one shot. These are really hard, challenging dungeons. And yeah, this is your end game. Another way to progress in the game, I talked about it earlier a little bit, is the Paragon Board. After level 50, you'll start unlocking Paragon points. You get multiple Paragon points per level. The way it works is when you get a level, you get 1 point, and then you get multiple points along the way, little icons on your experience bar. The Paragon Board is a scaling board of upgrades to your character. They start out small, such as +5 intelligence, +5 strength, but then you can work your way towards big nodes that have huge upgrades to your build, and they're build specific as well. And yeah, as you progress down the Paragon Board, you get to the end of the board and there's these little gates. Once you click on the gate, you can add a new board. And this is where you really combine these to your build. So for example, on Sorcerer, you can add a fiery board, and this has loads of upgrades to fire damage. You could add a lightningy board, things like that, which really give you a sense of progression, and you can really tie them to your builds and really, really push your character in the direction you want to push it. And this is also where the glyphs come from in the Nightmare Dungeons. There are big red circles, 1 on each board, that can have glyphs placed in them, and they unlock certain upgrades. Leveling the glyph up at the end of the Nightmare Dungeon makes them more effective too. These glyphs will have requirements such as obtain 25 dexterity from the area around the glyph. Completing this objective will grant you an additional bonus, so you can start picking up things around the glyph to power up the glyph and get these cool rewards. The Paragon Board is super confusing at first glance, but once you unlock it and start playing around with it, it does make a lot of sense. If you want a full video going like really deep on the Paragon Board, progressing down it, the different boards, the glyphs, then yeah, I can make a full guide if that's something people want to see. But for now, I'm probably going to wrap it up here because it's a lot when you've not seen it before and you've not unlocked it. But that's pretty much the end game progression. That is the end game of Diablo 4 right now. This is a continued service game, so we're likely going to see seasons maybe and more content coming into the end game, making it more challenging. But yeah, this is what we got for now. So let's talk about the other things you can do that aren't specific progression like this. Outside of all the progression, there's still fun things to do at endgame that also make your character stronger or give cool rewards. The first one is map completion. There's a huge thing to do once you finish the campaign. Completing strongholds, finding altars of Lilith, increasing your renown. These give new potion charges, skill points, and Paragon points, which are all account-wide. This is something a lot of big Diablo players did as soon as they finished the campaign for these permanent account-wide stat increases. Another thing you can do is the world bosses and the Gathering Legions. These are a great way to farm legendaries, gain experience on your way to 100. These are large group contents that can give a good set of rewards. The Gathering Legions also drop the Spectral Charging Mount, which is a really nice ghostly mount. There's no world tier requirement for these either, so they can be done at any point of the game. Finally, you can get involved with PvP if you fancy flexing your build against other players. Once you're over level 50, you can head to the Fields of Hatred at either the Dry Steppes or Kyrgyzstan. And yeah, the goal here is to collect things called Seeds of Hatred. So there's elites up all over the zone and mobs, and you take them down and collect Seeds of Hatred. These must be turned in at ritual sites and turned into red dust, which is your PvP currency. While in these zones though, you can be attacked by other players, and while performing a ritual to turn your seeds into dust, players in the zone will be alerted and might come over and take you down. And yeah, if you can successfully extract some red dust, they can be traded in for cosmetics, barding, trophies, and even a really cool mount. But yeah, that's it really. Whether you choose to progress deep into the level 70s, 80s, 90s into the harder and harder nightmare dungeons, or explore the other side content like map completion, mount collecting, bards, cosmetics, there's a ton of things to do after completing the main campaign in Diablo 4. But yeah, that's it for the video. If it's helped, consider subscribing for more. I'm covering lots of different systems in the game, creating leveling and endgame builds as well, so subscribe if you're into that, and let me know if there's anything I've missed or you have any questions. But that's it for this video. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.